All right, I think we'll get started. My name is Mark Weicker. I'm with Albite Weicker LLP, and this is the Special Education Legal Clinic. Thanks for jumping on. The clinic is hosted and provided by Albite Weicker LLP, Disability Rights Ohio, and the Ohio Coalition for the Education of Children with Disabilities, otherwise known as OCECD, which you're going to learn more about tonight. We've done the clinic mostly virtually so far. We had one in-person session in June, and I think our next few sessions are at least going to be virtual. But it's worked out well. Attendance has been good, and I think we've had some trainings that have been beneficial for everyone who participates. This topic again this month is an introduction to OCECD and who we are and what we do, and it will be provided by Tammy Sebastian and Najma Muhammad. And I'll hand it over to Tammy and Najma in a moment, but I want to take a minute too to remind you that this is the first in a series of several workshops. This one again is the introduction, and you can register for any of the workshops at the link there at the bottom of the page, lawyersforstudents.com/legal clinic. And you can register all the way out through August, and we're scheduled with OCECD hosting each of the workshops through August. And I'll stop my share here, and I want to share that series of workshops. So again, this one, who we are and what we do, OCECD, and then continuing on with different topics in those descriptions in March, April, May, June, skipping July, and then to August with all of the workshops hosted by OCECD. And again, you can register all the way through August at that link that I provided. So thanks for jumping on again, and I will pass it on to Tammy and Najma.
Well, thank you, Mark, very much, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us here tonight. I'm not going to do too much talking. I'm going to go ahead and we have recorded our Who We Are, What We Do training, but we are going to be available at the end live. Najma and I will be, and Mark will be available to answer questions at the end if there's any questions, comments. So with that being said too, if I could just draw your attention to the chat box, there is a pre-post eval link that I posted there. We ask that as you learn about what we do, we ask that you fill out that evaluation. It's very important to us as the State Parent Training Information Center in the state of Ohio. This is part of our requirements for our grant. So it's very important to us. And not only that, we do look at the comments, and if there is any other trainings that you want to see, we look at that. So they're very important to us. I know it takes a little bit of time, but we really, really appreciate if you could go ahead and fill out that link. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started with the training. Children with disabilities. So I'm going to give you a brief introduction. My name is Tammy Sebastian. I am the statewide program coordinator for the Ohio Coalition for the Education of Children with Disabilities, and I am also the parent of 2 individuals with disabilities. With that being said, tonight we're going to present with our presenters, Robin Bryant and Najma Mahmoud, and we're going to kind of do a format of a Q&A as we're going through. I'll be asking Robin and Najma some questions as we go throughout the training. With that being said, just some light housekeeping. We will open up for questions. So we ask that, you can go ahead and type your questions in the chat box as we go throughout, but we're going to open it up at the end for a Q&A. And with that being said, we'll get started. So Robin, I'm going to hand it over to you for introductions for you and Najma.
All right. Thank you so much, Tammy, for that introduction. I'm Robin, and I have 3 children. All of my children are grown, 2 of which had disabilities in school and were on IEPs. I have 4 grandchildren, one on a 504 plan and the other 2 on IEPs. So this has been kind of my life for a long time. But we'll go ahead and get started with, I'm going to talk to you about the Ohio Coalition for the Education of Children with Disabilities. We call it the short way of calling it is OCECD, how we came to be and what we do. So I want you to know that we have a mission, and I'll talk a little bit more about our mission, but we're going to talk first about that we were established in 1972, and we are a statewide nonprofit organization composed of parent and professional organizations representing over 50,000 individuals. We were already organized and brought together, and we were already a group of people in 1972, and it was actually in 1975 that the Education for All Handicapped Act was passed, and that was known as 94-142. It was the old version of IDEA. But we've been around for a long, long time. We have an absolutely beautiful mission, and I'm going to reread the mission. I read this to myself oftentimes to make sure that I'm on the right track, and it just helps me in doing my work. So the mission of the Ohio Coalition for the Education of Children with Disabilities is to endorse and promote efforts to provide appropriate quality education for children and youth with disabilities. We do so in the belief that all children have a right to a meaningful and relevant education. This belief affirms the dignity of each child or youth with disabilities, whose needs are unique and whose needs must be met equally and appropriately. OCECD is dedicated to ensuring that every child with disabilities is provided a free, appropriate public education. We will continuously strive to improve the quality of our services for all children and youth with disabilities in Ohio. I think that's a beautiful mission.
It is, Robin, and quite a history.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, I wasn't a part of that at that time. I was actually, at that time I wasn't even married. So I was still in high school. But
Wow.
To think that we already had formed and there was an organization, and I mean, that means a lot.
Yes.
We had already started. Yes, absolutely.
And thank you for sharing that with the audience, that throughout our mission and throughout the changes in history and the public law, how many times that's changed and still might continue to change. So I think that's important for everybody to hear. And then I seen in the mission that what you said, when something that really stands out for me is every child, all children. And Najma, I mean, maybe you can even speak to that too, that we'll go a little bit further later on. We also have a multicultural staff and provide services to our multicultural families. And Najma is going to talk a little bit about that later. But when we talk about all children, that's exactly what we're saying.
I think the mission strongly reflects the feelings of our organization. I really do.
Absolutely. So
parent training and information centers, you see the word PTIs, oftentimes we're referred to as a PTI, but that's what it stands for. We were funded by the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs, known as OSEP, authorized in Part D of the Individuals with Disability Education Act, also known as IDEA, and every state must have at least one parent training and information center. We have direct responsibilities under being a PTI under the law. So some of those responsibilities are framed as to help families to better understand their child's disability and educational needs, communicate more effectively with the school and related professionals, understand their rights and responsibilities under IDEA, obtain appropriate services, resolve disagreements with the school, and connect with other community resources. We are to work with families and to help families to understand that special education process. And believe me, it's a tough one because special education is heavy in process, as we all know. So but that's
Yeah,
kind of our guidelines.
Yeah, Robin, and I was just thinking, and Najma, I was just thinking some of those things that you were talking about, maybe that we could let everybody know what that might look like in those different areas. So I'm just going to kind of jump around and ask you both some questions. So, the first one that really stands out for me is, if I would take these into some sort of order. Understanding their rights and responsibilities. So what would that look like if a parent called you, Robin or Najma? How would you help them to understand their rights and responsibilities under IDEA?
Najma, do you want to start with that or go right
Sure.
ahead?
So one of the things that I do with my families, because because my families most of the times have the barrier of language and not understanding exactly what even ID means. So what I try to do is level it down to where it's a parent friendly, explaining to them, hey, these are the rights and these is the right the things that the school must provide. And once they understand everything, they feel more comfortable and they feel like, okay, now they don't feel so nervous. So I try to explain to them what are the rights and what are their responsibility. They also have responsibility. So they also have to understand what their responsibility is.
Perfect.
And I think you're right, Najma. I know that oftentimes the majority of my phone calls, that by the time the family's gotten to me, they are so heavy with emotion. Oftentimes I'm listening to them initially, and then I'll start asking questions, and then I can start making some sense out of what's going on. I ask if they've already got a child on an IEP. I'm asking for those documents, the ETR, the IEP. But so many families come to us and they're so intimidated by the process and so intimidated by meeting with the school that you're getting a lot of emotion. So we really have to kind of weigh that out and problem solve with them. And then, of course, the rights and responsibilities is a huge piece in that process as well.
Yeah,
So.
and I think too, and I think Najma kind of touched on this. Sometimes it's just really meeting that parent where they're at. Because each parent, it's going to look different. And Najma explained that some of her families, where she starts with them. And then I'm guessing too, understanding their child's disability and educational needs, and what that might look like. And maybe Robin, you could touch on that too, and not going too far in depth, because we do have trainings on IEPs and qualifying under IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. But oftentimes, there could be a disability that's not necessarily a disability under the law. So maybe could you talk a little bit about that and helping them understand their child's disability and educational needs?
Absolutely. Oftentimes, if the child is not already on an IEP and I'm asking them what their child's disability is, they might come out with something that doesn't necessarily fit specifically under a category under IDEA law. And we've got 13 disability categories, and that's only 13. And sometimes we have to take that information and try to figure out where their child might fit in problem solving with the family, and is an IEP appropriate, and just walking through all of that with them. But yes.
Thank you. Yeah. That's perfect. I think you answered that perfectly. And then Najma, I'm looking at I'm going to bounce back to you. How what would that look like connecting them to other community resources?
Oh, sorry. That's what I was gonna just add to, is that it's important for the parents to be connected with resources. Of course, we are here to provide them, but there are, community resources. Whether it be one of the resources that I work with is the Franklin County Board of DD, or just the board of DD. That's one. Also, within the community or within the school, there might be the intervention specialists, coordinators. So as long as the parent understands that they do have resources, and if we can connect with them and understand that they're not there by themselves. Sometimes the parent feels like they're doing this all by themselves, but once they found out that, hey, I can speak to this person, I can get to this agency, they feel more empowered and feel like, okay, now I can do this. So that's important for us to give them those connections.
I love that too. And I'm thinking too, as we're going through this, that, as we're supporting these parents and empowering them, that, we're going to have to connect them with those resources, because eventually we're not going to be there and they're going to have to rely on those natural supports. So thank you. That really, really clarifies a lot. And then lastly, I'm just going to bounce back to Robin before we go on to the last slide. This is probably the big one on everybody's mind. So how would we help to resolve those disagreements with the school, Robin?
For me, the first thing is sitting with that parent and, of course, trying to find out exactly what the problem is. Then at that point, I'm going to ask the parent to set up a meeting with the school. It might be an IEP meeting. It could be we need to write a letter to tell them that, hey, this is going on. We want to make sure that we're putting the school district on notice at that point that there is an issue. Oftentimes, school districts aren't even aware that the parent is really upset. They just know that something's wrong, and they're trying to reach out before they get into the school. And so for myself, it's getting the parent to set up that meeting and to let them also know that I will be coming with them, and to also let them know why we want this meeting. And it could be that we've already sent a referral for an evaluation. It could be that we want to talk more about the intervention process, that the response to intervention process they might be in. We might use facilitation depending on the situation. We could use mediation depending on the situation. But it's a matter of setting everything up with the school and making them aware that there's something going on, and kind of moving through that process.
Thank you, Robin. And I'll just add quickly, I know just from staff, hearing from staff and myself, that we also make sure we tell parents that we want to protect that relationship with the district, even as we're resolving those disagreements. I've heard you say that many times, Robin, Najma, that we always want to make sure, while we acknowledge that and that we might disagree, we want to protect that, because they're going to be with them for a long time. Unless they move, they're going to be with the district for a while.
Yes, they're in a partnership with the school at this point. It's a relationship, and they need to protect that relationship. And it's okay to disagree, and you can keep emotion out of that disagreement. So yeah, and It's working with families to understand that too.
Thank you, Robin. I'm gonna hop to the next slide for you guys.
All right. So our parent center and community parent resource center. So this is for some of the things that's going on today. So the reality and the changes of today and tomorrow for Parent Center. We have over 6 million children with IEP in USA, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico, they're coping with the impact of natural disasters, school violence, and the pandemic, and increased population to serve. And the IDEA being reauthorization on the horizon. So what this means is that one of the important thing is that children are facing many challenges in school, and children with disability are sometimes kind of put it aside because whether it be school violence or it could be impact. One of the things that I could speak on is the pandemic. When we had the COVID and school got shut down for almost 2 years, children with disability faced even bigger challenges because they didn't have internet, they couldn't read, they couldn't understand. And so our staff had to kind of take two roles: one, the role of being information specialist and assisting the family, and also becoming the teacher inside, because to teach them how to use the computer or how to understand what's going on. So sometimes our staff, even if they're not face to face, they kind of take the role of being the partner with the parents.
Wow. I love how you said that. That was, yeah, we did. We really seen a huge pivot. I know everybody's probably sick of that word that we pivoted, but there was a huge pivot and learning curve for us, and that we partnered with our families. And Robin, I know you have something to share about what that looks like with the Parent Training Information Centers and the CPRCs, the Community Parent Resource Centers. There was some history with natural disasters. So could you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. At one time, the Ohio Coalition for the Education of Children with Disabilities had a grant, and we actually provided technical assistance to many of the PTIs in the, I think it was through the Midwest part of the United States. And so I know that when apparently we had a hurricane down in New Orleans, and oh my goodness, everything was upside down, and I'm sure everybody remembers that. We actually had to go down to the PTI down there and work with them to get everything set up so that they could reach families. It was quite a big undertaking that we had to take on. So we've done some work in our time.
And I love that, the fact that we unite across the United States, these different
Absolutely.
centers, these parent training information centers, the CPRCs, and the community parent resource centers typically serve those underserved populations. So we are making sure that we have this holistic approach to being able to support families. And also looking at US, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico, and remembering, you know, Hawaii and Puerto Rico has faced a lot of challenges in the past few years also. So that we just unite and keep those support to families as we're going through this, and not to mention school violence. That is, you know, when our families come to us, there might be a lot of trauma. And there might be like just surviving this pandemic. And like Najma said, partnering with them, supporting them. And sometimes our roles are, and I think Robin mentioned this in the beginning, just to listen to them. That phone call could just be to listen, to let them know they're not alone and that we understand and we're connecting with them.
And
You can hear the relief in their voice as soon as they've got somebody that they know will listen to them and that can relate to them on a personal level and understands the feelings, because many of us, you know, have children ourselves that have had these disabilities, and we've been through some of this ourselves. So you can just hear that relief in their voice, that sigh, like, wow. I mean, I hear it all the time. So.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
may I just add one thing?
Yes.
When we're speaking about our increased diverse population that we serve, we're talking about trauma. Some of the parents, especially in the multicultural, the Somalian families that I work with, some of these children grew up in refugee camp for since they were born to since when they came to America. So, and they go to the same emotion as the child who was born in America. So all children are not different. But then when the child has disability and this parent is struggling, it's like you just said, Robin, sometimes just listening, and you can hear them in their voice say, you know what, even though we struggled and we come from different parts of the world, we're all the same. And it's good to have a partner. And sometimes I feel like that's what the Parent Center and the OCECD is for. We're a partner with the parent.
That's right. Wow. Well, that's a good way to end this slide. Very powerful.
All right. So the next one is oh, I got the wrong. All right. So the information specialists, most are parents of children and adults with disability, and persons with disability and educational professional. Okay, we're gonna have to re-record
Yeah,
that.
you're okay. No, absolutely, Najma. No,
I told you I'm not good at with the whole.
yeah,
Everything you said.
no, it's okay. So and I think we talked about that in the very beginning. When I introduced myself, Robin and Najma introduced ourselves. We all bring different things to the table. Some of us professionally have worked in education, but we are all either parents or individuals with disabilities, parents of individuals with disabilities, or family members. And so we bring a diverse, unique perspective. All of us have different things that we bring to the table, is what Najma was trying to say, and that we're also trained in IDEA and in the Ohio operating standards, so that we're able to train and support and make sure that parents are effective, powerful advocates for their own children. Robin, did you want to elaborate a little bit on that too?
Just that typically the staff that's working directly with families, we are called information specialists. We have many titles in OCECD, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that the ones working directly with families, we are the information specialists. So we're the ones that are listening to the families on the other end of the phone, and we are trained and knowledgeable in IDEA and the operating standards in Ohio. And I think Najma pretty much covered all of that. So
yeah, and I just go ahead, Najma. I'm
I was
sorry.
just gonna add that the word trained, sometimes the parents, when they come to us, we give them the information, but we also sit with them and train them to understand all the steps, whether it be understanding what the IEP is, IETR, what they need to have. So as information specialists, it's just that you sit there and you give the information that we already have gained through our training and provide them that training, so one day they can become their own information specialists when they're dealing with their kids and their disabilities.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that. I'm glad Robin brought up that point about information specialists throughout the state of Ohio, and we're going to touch on that in the next slide. But I have heard, and oftentimes there's a misconception that we're advocates, and I always try to, and maybe Robin, you can speak a little bit about this. Advocacy is what we do. But our title is not advocates, it's information specialists. We are empowering that parent to be that advocate for their child. But I don't want to confuse them, but advocacy is absolutely part of what we do, but our official title is information specialist. And I think it's so fitting, as Najma just said, we are giving them that information. And oftentimes it might be in chunks, or they are coming in for a training and sitting through a 2-hour workshop, or now an hour online. And like you guys are joining us today, we are providing you with that information. So I'm so glad you touched on that, you guys.
I think our job is in actually training and also helping them just to become better advocates for their own children, helping them to have that confidence. And so, yeah, you're right.
Absolutely. Well, this is perfect, changing right into that parent perspective.
Right. Okay. So we bring also, as being an information specialist, we're bringing that parent's perspective to the table. We have to remember that I'm here because I have a vested interest in all of this, because of my own children. And that parent has a great investment in their child's future. And I talked a little bit earlier about how intimidating this process is. And the parent can also be emotional when discussing their child's needs. I mean, I can remember sitting at many, many IEP meetings in regard to my own children, and I cried. I couldn't even talk. So thank goodness I had a husband there that was able to pick up the pieces and go with it. But when you don't have that other person there, we come in and play that part and to help articulate concerns of the family. And it's really helpful. I'm going to give an example of what intimidation can look like. And of course, I've been with the coalition for a long time, so this was a very recent situation, so it's on my mind. But it kind of brought me back to, gosh, I couldn't believe that this parent she had called me, and I talked to her like 3 or 4 times on this issue. And the bottom line was that she did not agree with the evaluation that the school district had done. And they, of course, they said that the child did not qualify for an IEP, and she felt like the child did. So she needed to just sign that line that she disagreed with what the team had agreed, their agreement was. And so she waited to even sign that paper that she disagreed, and she was really bothered by this. And she said, the school is telling me that I have to sign it today, the day of the meeting, and they're also telling me that they need to have that and a letter on why I disagree by 3:00 this afternoon. And I said, that is not true. You need to take some time. You need to look through that and really find out what it is that you disagree with. And I said, right now, your signature is all you need to give. And if you want to think a few days about that, that's fine too. I says, I don't know what's going to happen to you if you don't get them that letter by 3:00. I want you to think, what in the world is going to happen to me if I do not have that letter to them by 3:00? And she says, well, I guess nothing. And I said, that's right, nothing. I said, you have not messed up this process because you're waiting on that. And the thing of it was that she called me 3 times, and I had to talk to her about this 3 different times before she finally felt comfortable enough to just go ahead and to do what she felt comfortable doing, was just to sign and leave it go at that. And that was just brought on by feeling intimidated and not sure that what she was feeling was right or wrong, and that what they were telling her was right or wrong. So that's huge in this. A lot of families come to us because they're just simply not sure and they're intimidated. That is huge in this process.
Well,
So,
and I heard, Robin, you gave her some confidence in being able to just take her time. And sometimes it's just being patient.
Yes.
And giving and allowing yourself some time to think about those things and not acting on them, especially when we're emotional, when you talked about that, especially when we're emotional.
And, when I called her back after those few calls, and over the weekend, and I called her back, she was fine. And she talked to me and she was confident, like you said, she felt confident. And she said, everything's okay now. And I told her we would work on that letter if she wanted to send something in. And she said that was fine. So that happens a lot.
Yes, I imagine it does. And Najma, I was thinking too, do you want to share maybe your perspective on, and like we spoke earlier, we said all means all, but we also know you had brought up that there might be some unique challenges that your families face. And I think that might come with a different perspective of going into meetings and maybe not having English as your first language. So can you share a little bit about that parent perspective?
Definitely. One of the things that I've dealt with in the past 5, 6 years that I've been with the coalition is that sometimes when parents feel, especially when English is not your first language, or even just going to an IP meeting or any kind of place where you have to deal with your child's disability, they feel overwhelmed and they feel like, oh my gosh, look, all these professionals, and I'm just a parent. What do I know? And so they kind of turn to, you know, uh, if it's me, and they're like, so what are they talking about? What is this about? It almost feels like they feel out of place. They feel left out of the conversation. And I think one of the important jobs that we do is we remind them, hey, listen, this meeting is for you and your child. So you do have a voice and you can speak. Even if we have to go through the translator, but you have a voice and you do have the right to speak. And so you kind of have to constantly coach them and remind them that this meeting is not about all these important people, so called, but it's about you and your child.
Yes, thank you. And I'll just quickly, Robin, I'm not sure if did you want to share something? I
I
didn't
was
know.
just going to talk a little bit about, and I think Najma had touched on this, the ETR process in and of itself is such an intimidating piece of all of this. I think it's more intimidating than sitting down in an IEP meeting. It's that ETR process because you know what? A lot of these families are not schooled in the jargon of that evaluation. they're not schooled in this, and their responsibility is to be a team member and to participate. And oftentimes they don't even know how to participate because they don't understand the scores that are being thrown at them. It's tough. I mean, it really is hard. So I think, Naj,
Yes.
you had mentioned one other time, all of a sudden that parent becomes very silent.
Mhm.
And I remember you saying that, and I thought, absolutely. It's all of a sudden you could just see it on their faces that they're out of touch at this point. And here they are, they got to participate.
Mhm.
And then you've got a school district then telling them, you have to sign now. And you have
Yeah.
to give me that letter. And they don't even know why they disagree, but they've got a feeling that their child should be on that IEP. So
Yeah,
just
and no, Robin, I think that's great. You touch on it, and going back to what Najma said too. I love what she used and saying coaching them back to reminding them and coaching them that you do have that voice when she sees them, shutting down and becoming silent, and reminding them you have a voice. I know this feels intimidating, but encouraging them to speak up. I just really quickly, before we change slides, I just wanted to share an experience that I had. And touching on Najma with families who might not have English as a first language, I was able to experience going to a IEP meeting in a school that was all Spanish speaking, and I was the only one who did not speak Spanish, and had to rely on the translator. And I can tell you, I was overwhelmed with emotion. Now, this is someone who has been in this field for, with the coalition for 11 years in this field, 15, 20 years in education. And I felt intimidated. I felt lost. I felt, the emotions that went through me, because by the time the translator would translate to me, they had already moved on. And I didn't feel like anything I was going to say at that moment would even be relevant to the conversation. So many, and I felt like I couldn't help them like I wanted to, because I was relying on somebody else. So I got to experience that from a unique perspective. And I can tell you, I cried the entire way home. And that's me having the knowledge and having the background. So I can relate in just a little small aspect of that for what that might feel like for our families who don't have English as their first language, and or for their language, and then to be able to have to rely on other people to translate for them. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you. All right. Right doing that.
Information specialists. So we talked a little bit about this before. Are you guys going to tell us a little bit about what some of
Sure.
those things are? Yeah.
So to expand on that title of information specialist, we're there to assist the parents and the students. We help them to understand their responsibilities, to identify their options, and oftentimes they know what their child needs. They know the support that their child needs. It's, can we get those things? And to also help them, we talked a little bit about this, to develop that advocacy skill, not only for the student, but also for that family as well, and to help them to prepare for that IEP meeting. I mean, we have to sit down with them typically ahead of time, or on a Zoom call, or even over the phone, and help them to understand. Let's think about how we're going to make this more of a successful IEP meeting. Let's write down what you would like to talk about. Let's begin to make that list of things that, we need to talk about. How much time do you think you're going to need to discuss all these things, so that they're not maybe having just the half hour or the hour meeting? It may be a 2-hour meeting. Helping them just to organize their thoughts and to go into the IEP meeting so that they can participate. And they can even let the school district know ahead of time, hey, these are the things I want to talk about. Let's make sure we have time to talk about them. So
Yeah, and
we are not, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I seem to identify their options regarding special education and supports. And I think you said sometimes, you might have said this in previous slides, but, not even knowing what they can ask for or what.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they come in with a mindset that, oh my gosh, they're going to give me 10 or 15 minutes and that's wonderful. And I'm thinking, no, it just looks like you've got a whole bunch of goals and a whole lot of objectives, and they're going to need to give you more than 10 or 15 minutes. So we're going to ask for more. It's helping them to understand your child has a right to these services. Don't be afraid to ask for them. And if you don't think it's enough, then you need to tell them, no, this isn't going to work. So helping them just to feel confident about that process. We are not legal representatives, and we're there to help them to work through the process. I mean, I will take a family all the way up to actually the complaint process. I'll file that complaint, help them to file it. I won't go to court with them. And if they need an attorney, we'll let them know that they need an attorney. And at that point, you know, if we know of any that are out there that are really good, we might even suggest certain ones. But at that point, you know, that's where we back out when we've exhausted everything. So, but there's all kinds of processes that you can utilize when you're working with a school district. There's mediation, there's facilitation, there's administrative review, there's just having another IEP meeting to kind of, you know, have a meeting of the minds and clear the air. All kinds of things we can do before we get to the point where we might have to file a formal complaint or, you know, actually get an attorney to help the family. So,
well, Robin, and I'm glad you brought that up because we are hosting this alongside Disability Rights Ohio and Albie Weicker. So I think that's this is a good point to even say that our protection and advocacy, our state P&A, Disability Rights Ohio can be there to help also.
absolutely. Absolutely. I've used them a lot. Just if I have questions myself and need clarifications, I'll refer to them or maybe to an attorney as well. So, or sometimes I just have to get the books out and start looking back.
Well, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and that'll lead us into Najma.
So I'm going to say a little bit about the multicultural staff. So we have staffs that are bilingual. We have Hispanic speaking staff. Myself, I speak Somalian and Arabic, and I work with the families who are from any part of the African culture. So what is our job there is to help the family, as we've been talking about, understanding what services we are available to them and what resources are available to them, and what IDEA is and what services are under there that needs to be provided for their children with disability. And majority of all the material that we have in our organization is being translated to their language so that it's available for them to understand. So if a family comes in, they speak Arabic, we try to have that translated. If it's Somalian, if it's Hispanic, whatever it is. And so the multicultural staff job is a little bit different in the sense that sometimes we might even have to sit down with the family and help them write the letter to the school and to the district, or sit down and help them read what the IEP is saying. So it's a special group.
And if I could just say absolutely, and if I could just say the teamwork that we do together to support our families. Recently, I can just tell you that Najma and I had supported a family together, and it was very powerful. And when we're talking about the outreach material, we had just recently collaborated with the Ohio Department of Education on a document, seclusion and restraint document, which the Ohio Department of Education had translated in Arabic. And to be able to firsthand see what that's like when, you know, this mother had been experienced and didn't have the education of what seclusion and restraint was, to hand her, to be able to hand her a document in her language and to see the look on her face that she was so empowered just to be able to see something in her language. I think that's important and needed to be kind of, I just wanted to outline that when you talked about the outreach material and how powerful that is for our families.
Definitely.
All right. Our regional offices.
So the OCECD has regional office throughout the state of Ohio. Our main office is located in Marion, Ohio. So this map just demonstrates all the offices that we have.
And if you know what, and if you see, I wanted to say too, you can see we definitely cover the state of Ohio. And I've often had conversations where people are like, why do some people cover so many counties? There's one office for all those counties. So if you look at it, some of those counties are much smaller than others. Some have much larger. If you can see, I couldn't speak to this because we have Robin on here. If you see Robin's over there, you're Butler, Preble, and Hamilton, right, Robin?
Right. And, Hamilton and Butler alone, I mean, the population in them, there are so many more children that have these IEPs because Hamilton and Butler, they're just heavily populated. So I only have the 3 counties. Butler County keeps me very busy. We have some parent mentors in Hamilton, which help out. Butler doesn't have many. So I am busy in Butler County. So
Yeah.
that alone, where some of them, their areas more rural, more spread out. So that's why you see some information specialists that cover a larger area. It's because the population isn't as dense as it is in Hamilton and Butler.
Absolutely. And our multicultural staff are on here as well. And I just wanted to say too, that when we're talking about the state of Ohio and covering the state of Ohio with our regional offices, Robin had mentioned parent mentors. I just wanted to touch on that briefly. There are parent mentors within school districts across the state of Ohio. And they are, there's a parent mentor grant that allows that to happen. Some work for educational service centers, some are within those districts and employed by those districts. But those parent mentors are actually in the districts that their child had attended. So they are familiar with the resources within the districts, and they are familiar with maybe the administration there too. So we do have on our website where you can look to see if you have a parent mentor within your district. But we do cover the entire state of Ohio also. So I just wanted to touch on that when Robin mentioned the parent mentors. Okay.
So what are the tools that we might use? Oh, these are some of the services. I'm sorry, I was jumping ahead.
Okay.
So the
fine.
services that we provide, we have, oh my goodness, we go on and on and on. I don't even know if this list really tells everything that we do. So,
Yeah.
But we provide information about early intervention programs for infants and preschoolers, family support systems. We offer resources for parents and professionals, free trainings for parents and professionals. We have the reading mentoring program, which is nice and it's big and it's a wonderful resource for families and for school districts.
Yes.
Is our reading mentoring program.
Yes.
And we offer teamwork between families with, and service providers. We also refer off to those other agencies and that. We provide services when it comes to transition from high school to the community. And we're very active in public policy and school reform. So we do a lot.
Yeah. And like Robin said, this is not an exhaustive list of
Right.
the services that we provide. And one of the things I was thinking about when we were looking at public policy and school reform, a lot of our staff also sit on a lot of committees throughout the state of Ohio representing the Ohio Coalition. So our voice, we're making sure that our voice and that we have a seat at the table. And when I say we have a seat at the table, we are representing the families in the state of Ohio and in having that seat. So I think that's important also to mention.
Absolutely.
Now the tools, Robin.
Yeah.
Robin wanted to tell you about these tools.
Yes, this is what I have to use when I'm working with families. So a lot of phone support. Oh my goodness. One-on-one consultation, groups and training sessions. We have our It's My Turn student transition programs, and that's just amazing because we're actually involving students in those programs, which is neat. I've seen it done before. That's not something that I directly do, but I can always connect you to that person that works in the It's My Turn program. And I've seen some of this, and I think it's beautiful. It really is. And of course, we publish bilingual materials, quarterly e-newsletters, and we have a website that is it describes our services, who works for us, conferences, resources, publications, and of course, we have links to other helpful organizations in that. So our website, it gives you a lot of good information. So, and also we're connected with social media. We do a lot there as well.
I can hop on the social media. So
Absolutely.
we do have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and Pinterest. So we are always making sure we're communicating when we have a training on Facebook, connecting with other agencies, connecting with parents. And if I could just add too, on the It's My Turn student transition trainings, like Robin said, it is amazing. You basically, after this self-determination curriculum, after they come in and they teach this self-determination curriculum, that student is actually writing their own transition plan. So how much more powerful can you get than that, right?
It's so neat to see them involved in their future or in what's going on with them right now, and to be a part of them writing that transition plan. They get excited, and to see them sit at their IEP meetings and they're sitting at the head of the table and they take that seat with a smile on their face. It's really, it's a good feeling.
It is.
It really is.
It is. And then if I could just touch really quick with Najma, and then we'll move on. But I just wanted to say the publishing bilingual materials. I just kind of wanted to say it really doesn't tell the whole story. All of our trainings, any of our materials, our multicultural staff, we're working together when we are even creating the trainings, making sure that when and if it becomes translated, that we are taking that into account, that it's not an afterthought. We're thinking about that when we're designing our trainings, when we are designing our material. And I just think there's, we can't say enough about that we are making sure that all means all the time.
Definitely.
Oh, we're at the end.
Okay, so I'll do that in summary. So our purpose is to support families of children with disability. Our services are at no cost to parents, and we are here to give a voice to parents and children dealing with life's challenges. And I just wanted to just to put a point to that our service is not
Okay, I'm sorry. It looks like we had some problems with the audio at the end. Najma, do you remember what you were saying? I think we were just kind of wrapping up there, letting everybody know if they, if they wanted to reach out to us, our contact information. I actually posted some links in the chat box for our website. Did you want to add something else too, Najma?
Yeah, I just was going to say, I think the audio might cut off, is that one of the things that the parents are amazed by is the fact that our service is at no cost to them. Once they find out, like, all the information and all the time and energy we put it toward them and helping them, they say, well, is this a cost? And even before the first meeting, I try to explain to them our service is at no cost to them, and that this is a nonprofit organization, and our main purpose is just to empower them and to give them all the information and understand their rights. And so it's important to remind them all the time that, hey, this doesn't cost, because there are other agency that charge fees for certain services. So I always remind the parents that we're here for them, and it is not a cost to them.
Thank you, Najma. And then I'm looking in the chat box and I just see, I apologize. It's not a link. I just posted our website, www.ocecd.org. So it's not a link that you could copy and paste. I mean, you could copy that and then put it in your browser. And then also, we'd like to open it up now. So I guess I will go ahead and ask, did anybody want to, and you can type in the chat box, or I mean, I don't know if they can unmute themselves or not, Mark, but did anybody learn anything new about the coalition? Was this new information? Even if you've known the Ohio Coalition for the Education of Children with Disabilities, did you learn something new? Or is there anything that you want to know? I know that there was, and I know I just asked 2 questions, but I know there was a question in here about whether or not you can access the services in another county. We serve the county that you live in. We ask that you go to that regional information specialist because they're aware of the supports and the needs in that county. So it has to be specific for your residents. But if you go ahead and let me know if this is, oh, great to know these resources are available. Awesome. And then, so, our reading mentorship program was new. So our reading for mentoring achievement, is that, I'm guessing that's what you're referring to, the mentoring for reading achievement program. So
Yeah, that's right, Tammy. Yeah.
Yeah. So we actually, and that's on our website too. I'm just like our It's My Turn and our GPS trainings. That is another one that we actually have. We will come in and do that training, and it is actually a program that we train the districts in order to get volunteers to be mentors to help those kids who are struggling with reading. So if you are interested in that, please go on our website. We have information on there. I think we actually even have modules on there too. There is a wealth of information in our website. I know there is a lot of information there. We are currently in the process of updating that. So yeah, that is a little bit about that. So thank you for asking, Mark. And I see here, I've heard of OCECD, but didn't know the services were that comprehensive. So, oh my God, I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so glad to hear that you knew that we have so much out there. And there's a lot that we do. Let me see, how much longer do we have, Mark? About 5 minutes, or? Because I want to make sure I know there's some things in the chat.
Yeah. Yeah, you have time. Yeah.
Okay. So, sorry, this is long. So, they're talking about being tested by an independent psychologist. Okay. So, I'm just gonna say, I'm not gonna be able to read. That is very lengthy. However, I don't know what county you're in, but it sounds like you might benefit from some support from us. So go ahead and reach out to our 1-800 number. It is, let me see if I can get this just off the top of my head. I believe we're 1-844-382-5452. So I can go ahead and put that in the chat. I think Najma is going to go double check, but then reach out. That is our main number. So we do have an intake specialist. If you're not sure, if you're not on our website, you can call that number and she will connect you to somebody in your area. If there's a parent mentor in your area, she will also connect you and give you the information for a parent mentor. And then one last question. It looks like, Najma, were you going to give me the correct information? I believe it's 1-844-382-5452.
I'm just going to type it in the chat. It's 1-800. Yeah, I'll just type it in here so everybody can see it.
Okay, awesome. And this was a couple of questions, Mark, that I've seen about it being recorded. You might want to
Yeah,
answer.
we can post this. It'll be at the link where you registered for the workshop. So I can provide that at the end too, but it's lawyersforstudents.com/legal clinic. And I'll put that in here too. But it usually takes a day or so to get it posted online, but we post them all after they're done. We post the videos right afterwards within a day.
Okay, thank you. And then I just want to grab this one last question, if you don't mind. Because somebody was saying they live in Mahoning County where there isn't an OCECD quarters. I want to make sure that I explain there is. We cover the entire state of Ohio. There is not a city or a county that we do not cover. So I'm not sure if we miscommunicated that when we were talking about that in that slide, but we cover the entire state of Ohio. So you do have somebody to connect with. So again, reach out to that number and they will put you in touch with somebody in that county. So I think I got everything. Everybody's saying thank you. Oh, thank you very much, Terry. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And you were unsure. I hope we cleared that up for you, but that 1-800 number is going to be your go-to. And Mark, thank you for letting us come on today and share all this great information.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I appreciated the presentation. And I was just going to let everyone know that this is the page where you register, and it should look familiar because that's how you signed up for tonight. And then at the bottom, so this is the workshop that we had tonight. And you'll see after tomorrow, there'll be a link right here that says watch video. So you can watch the video. And then if you want to register for any of the next or all of the next ones at the bottom of the page, you can do that too.
Perfect. Well, thank you. And if you can fill out those pre-post eval links that I put in the chat, we would be very appreciative. Again, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Najma. Thank you, Tammy. Have a good night.
You
Thank
too.
you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Good night.